Alright, so I'm back from my vacation, so it's time for us to look at what are the best decks in Hearthstone right now. There was a small nerf that definitely made Druid a bit worse, but now let's look at what are the other best performing decks. If you're serious about Hearthstone, drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget you can hire me for some Hearthstone coaching. Now, let's check out the decks.
You are not prepared!
Starting off with Hunter, which I'm really surprised they're still not doing anything about. We still have 40 Hunter doing really strong, but the 30 variant is doing just as good, so it basically comes down to your preference. In this variant, we are no longer running the Nagas, but we are running one Sir Finley, so you can swap out your King Crush back into the deck when he comes out before he needs to. And we also have room for Mr. Mukla. And even though this is a great card to have in the deck, you gotta remember that this might actually screw you over with your Faithful Companion as well as with your Selective Breeder, because you're no longer running only free beasts, so your decisions might be not the ones you want to be seeing. Other than that, we still have a couple of Trinket Trackers to fish out the bananas, as well as the Costume Singers so you can fish out some good secrets. And the cool thing about zombies is it also activates your Nerubian Vizier, because that's also undead, as well as your Wild Seed package. We actually are running Arelon in this one, which is also something you don't normally see, but obviously it is a decent inclusion because it has so much stats in it. And same can be said for Queen Ashara, which you could be using for an extra Colossal, which a lot of the times is giving you a beast you're going to be reviving with your Stranglethorn Heart, but you can also take the Ring of Tides, with which you could repeat the Stranglethorn Heart for 1 mana again, giving you extra King Crushes, which can be huge against control decks. We obviously still have Hollow Hound, which is busted as hell, and I really thought they should be doing something about it. But yeah, it's basically 40 Hunter, so no need to talk about it too much. Matchup-wise, here's what the stats show, and Druid was a bad matchup, but now it's even more rare, so you shouldn't really have too much problems with those. And Rage Warrior might be a little bit of trouble as well, because they can OTK you from hand, and Evolve Shaman is also a little bit on the iffy side. As for the mulligans, here's what the stats show when going first, and Costume Singer is obviously great, going first and second. Hope of Kel'Thuzad can also be pretty huge. Spirit Poacher is all around great on turn 2. Arelon is also okay if you're curving into it, and same can be said for Pozic. Trinket Tracker is not bad, Wild Spirit as well is great. And if you don't already have your Costume Singer, you could even consider keeping Hidden Meaning. Lorfemar, I guess if you're sure you're against the control deck, you might want to keep it, but other than that, it's probably a bit too slow. Barrel of Monkeys is great, Vizier can also work, and same goes for zombies, again if you don't have Costume Singer. As for One on the Coin, here's what the stats show again, and your Spirit package is great. Weapon's still good, you would never really keep the Heart, I don't know why the stats are here. Singer still, Pozic still, Lorfemar again, against slow matchups, and Queen Ashara can also be great here, especially since you're going second, hence you have the coin. Arelon is good, and if you already have a good one drop, Bunch of Bananas can also work, and against particular opponents, Star Power can also be great. As for other good Hunter decks, like I said, the 30 variant is still doing as strong as ever, and we have several variations of those two archetypes, and that's basically it for Hunter right now. On the number 2 spot we have Enraged Warrior, which has been a killer of a deck for quite a while now, and this variant is actually not running Growmash, even though that one is doing just as good, and actually some of the top streamers are still preferring that one over this, but still, the stats show this one to be slightly favored with the Crazed Wretch. Anyway, the rest of the deck is pretty much the same thing from before. You can make a lot of stats with the help of Anima Extractor, and also on turn 6 your Embers of Strength become a lot stronger, and you can buff him even higher with your Imbued Axe, as long as you've managed to damage him with things like your Sun Fury Champion. You can also OTK people with the help of Decimator Olgra and Remornia, as well as the 2-mana Crazed Wretch. But you are gonna have to buff them quite a lot with your Anima Extractor, but you can also use the Jam Session and whatnot. And you can also dish out tons of stats with the help of your Riffs, especially if you manage to repeat your Bridge Riff. The thing about the Riffs is, you want to be repeating the big ones with the cheaper ones, so you're not really wanting to play Verse Riff in the early turns unless you really need to get rid of something very high priority, but other than that, you would much rather repeat your Bridge Riff instead. And a cool thing you could be doing with this one on turn 5 for instance, is you could turn 5 Bridge Riff and coin out the 1-mana Verse Riff, and that way you get 2 batches of the Bridge Riff, and that's a ton of stats. You can also use Story Belore for a lot of reaction, and you can revive it quite a few times with the help of your fire spells. And yeah, all around the deck is just working great right now. As for the matchups, here's what the stats show, and again, Thaddeus Druid was somewhat of a bad matchup, but that's no longer something you're gonna be seeing too much of. Although Shamazan Priest might be a little bit of trouble, and same goes for Thaddeus Warlock. The rest looks great though. As for the mulligan, here's what it looks like going first. Story Belore is great, Anima Extractor as well, the Egg, the Location, and the Axe. Sun Fury Champion can also be pretty powerful, especially against board-centric matchups, and Chorus Riff is also not bad either. If you already have a good curve, you might even consider things like Jam Session or Bridge Riff. As for On the Coin, it's pretty similar, but here you could even consider keeping Bridge Riff if you don't have anything else. Light of the Phoenix apparently is a bit higher here, but I wouldn't really be keeping it like that unless I have a very specific plan for it, and things like Embers of Strength might also make the cut here. For other good warrior decks right now, like I said, the Gromash variant is also doing quite well, and we do have Menagerie Warrior doing okay-ish, even though it's not as strong as it used to be. Riff and Roll Warrior still not great though. On the number 3 spot, we have this different variant of Relic DH, which is using the new Remix Rhapsody, and it also has room for Sylvanas. Relic Demon Hunter is still super strong in the current meta, and you can be doing a lot of crazy things with it as long as your Relic of Dimensions actually hits some very serious discounts. You can also copy your hand with the Photographer Fizzle, which can also be insanely strong, especially if you're copying some good relics like that. And you also have Prosecutor Meltronix, which can lock your opponent out of their good removals on a turn where you land a very big Relic of Phantasms, for instance. Akani also slows them down nicely, and you have some good tempo tools like Zalag, as well as your Zymox. With the help of Taste of Chaos, you could be getting yourself some extra Unleash Fells, and you're actually not running the Enchanter in this one, which I really do believe was a great inclusion, but I guess Remix Rhapsody also makes the cut here. As for the matchups, we don't have as much stats here, but Thaddeus Druid was against something not that great for you, and Enraged Warrior is also still not gonna be too good for you as well. But the rest looks good, even though the stats are not super filled. As for the Mulligan, we're gonna have to use the aggregated stats, and obviously your good relic package is always gonna be great, and when going second, Relic of Dimensions might also make the cut for you. Same goes for Zymox when going second. Akani can also be decent, especially if you already have a good curve. Illidari Studies is great, but you would generally try to be playing it on turn 2 so you can get a lucky Spectral Sight, for instance. Taste of Chaos can also be good. And if you already have a good curve going, even things like Sylvanas might make the cut. School Teacher is also not bad. For other good Demon Hunter decks, we also have the Enchanter variant doing pretty well. And we also have Outcast Demon Hunter, which has been doing very well lately, and it has quite the games in it too. Big Demon Hunter is also still playable, even though it's not the powerhouse it used to be. On the number 4 spot, we have Unholy Death Knight, which has been doing very well for quite a while now. The deck is pretty standard, even though we are having room for Blightfang in this one, and we also have Magatha, which helps you with the card draw a lot. We're actually not running Plague Strike in order to help Magatha not give your opponent too much stuff, and the only spells you are running here would be your Grave Strengths. Other than that, everything is basically the same. As for the matchups, Control Priest, Blood Death Knight, and Frost Death Knight would be your worst ones, but everything else looks pretty good, even though Enraged Warrior is a stone cold 50-50. As for the Mulligan, when going first, here's what the stats show, and no, you're not really gonna be keeping Marigar when going first unless you already have a perfect hand. I wouldn't really be keeping Astalor either. Magatha could make sense if you already have a good curve. Your good 1-drops are great, Battlefiend Necromancer as well, Hawkstrider Rancher can also be great, and same goes for Arms Dealer. As for when on the coin, again, Arms Dealer is great, Magatha's still decent. Basically all of your good 1-drops, Battlefiend Necromancer, and the Rancher is still good. Vizier can also make the cut, and if you already have a good curve, the Swarmguard can also be great. We also have Frost Death Knight doing quite well, and we have a couple of different variants, one of which is actually running Magatha, which sounds pretty weird. There's also the Hollowhound variant of Unholy Death Knight, and we have quite a few decent Blood Death Knight variants, even though their win rate is not as high. And on the last spot, we still have Pure Paladin doing as strong as ever, and this is still the variant with Katori. If you don't have Katori, you could swap him out for Order in the Court, which has been a very decent replacement, and actually some people do run that instead. But the rest of the deck is pretty much the same. You have the 3 good 1-drops, Lady Liadrin, which you could use early game, or you can save her later, so you can buff her out and actually make all of your minions into Roche Divine Shields. Feast and Famine is still insanely strong to close out games, but it can also stabilize some lifesteal for you. The 3-mana now free attack Disco Maul is still super strong, and obviously the Horn of the Windlord is super good as well. We have Purator, which draws you out quite a few cards, Anachronos can stabilize very heavily for you, the Countess can give you some insanely good synergies out of nowhere, Leviathan is also a mech you can pull with the Purator, and it can also stabilize quite well for you, but yeah, all around the deck is great. As for the matchups, Outcast Demon Hunter is not going to be great for you, and same can be said for Spell Demon Hunter if you manage to find one, but that's literally all of the bad matchups for you. Everything else looks very green. For the Mulligan, going first you want a good 1-drop, the Purator is still super solid, Boogie Down is great, Disco Mole is good. If you already have a good 1-drop, you could consider Hand of a Doll. Depending on the matchup, Liadrin or Kotori could be a keep, and that's about it for the keeps on going first. And when going second, it's pretty much the same thing. For other good Paladin decks, it's nothing but pure Pallies lately, so yeah, that's basically it. For the classes we haven't mentioned, starting off with Druid, here's what it looks like for Thaddeus Druid nowadays, and it's a lot weaker. And we also have Big Druid under 50% as well. As for Mage, Burn Mage seems to be the best performer, even though we also have the spooky Grand Magister variant, which is also doing quite well. Secret Mage is barely above 50%, so it's basically these three archetypes right now here. For Priest, Undead Priest is at the top, but we also have Control Priest doing quite decently well, especially in skilled hands. With Rogue, Secret Rogue seems to be the best performer right now, even though Miracle Rogue can still do some crazy things in skilled hands. With Shamans, Evolve Shaman is still very good, and Totem Shaman is also doing great, and there's also Big Shaman above 50%, but I wouldn't really try that one too much. And with Warlock, Imp Thaddeus Warlock is the best performer for the class right now, even though the sample size is very small, and we also have the Curse variant of Thaddeus Warlock, which is also doing okay. There's also a different variant of Thaddeus Warlock, but I don't think it's just that strong right now. It's just very high rolly when it works and very underwhelming when it doesn't. Anyway, that's gonna be it for this top 5, guys. Hope this helps you figure out what you want to be playing until the new expansion happens. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I'm Kris05, and I'll see you in my next video or stream.